Good morning, everyone. Microphone check, screen check. All right. Wonderful. Looks like everything's working correctly. Fantastic. Gotta love that. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Hopefully everyone is able to rest up, get ready for the day ahead, all that fun stuff. As always, on the left side of the screen, make sure to read through the live trade room morning prep PDF. Very important to go through and understand everything that is inside there. I just wanted to take a second to give a shout out to our latest members that joined overnight. Thank you so much for the support. I'm pumped to have you on the YouTube family and in the SSFTG family. If you aren't a part of the SSFTG family or haven't joined as a part of the YouTube side of things, check out the join button below the stream to gain access before our next private webinar, get access to the Discord chat, and of course you get that awesome badge next to your name so you can show the YouTube support, which always looks really cool. If you're trying to figure out what it is exactly that we're doing here every day, look no further than the Day Trading Academy. You can find that over on SSFTG. It comes packed with about 19 plus hours of material loaded, and that's not including the hundreds of hours plus of content that we've got going on else with everything else. So keep that in mind. But when we're talking about the stream side of things, right, please keep in mind, YouTube does tend to have about a 3 to 30 second delay, depending on where you're logging in from. But if you want to level up to VIP status, you can enjoy exclusive permanent, excuse me, good timing, permanent access to our non-delayed live analysis stream via Zoom direct meetings, as well as the monthly VIP webinars, which we actually just had this weekend, this past weekend, private VIP events, one-on-one scheduling access, all kinds of cool stuff. So whether you're here and you're totally new, or you're a veteran over on the VIP stream, welcome. I'm glad to have you here with me today. Let's take a look at some news, take a look at some charts, see what's going on for today. Don't forget to grab your morning DP levels as posted for you this morning for the major 7 markets that we take a look at. Get those all covered for you there. Taking a look at the news for today. On the news side of things, finally, right? We finally have some news. Nothing earlier, which, I mean, kind of goes along with what's been going on for the rest of the week. But we do have crude oil inventories today at 10:30. If you look at yesterday, Tuesday gives the API weekly crude oil, which is typically a pretty good heads up. This came out way worse than expected, 4.319 million. And if we're looking at, there we go. If we're looking at today, right there, forecast 0.659 million. Well, yesterday they were forecasting 0.375. So realistically, it would make a lot more sense that this comes out closer to the, positive 4 million-ish area, which would obviously have a very bearish impact on crude oil. At least it should. The response to that could be equally as important. But that's really about all the news that we have until this afternoon. Yay, FOMC day. At 2 o'clock at 1400 Eastern, we have FOMC statements, Fed interest rate decisions, which are forecasted at 0.25%. And then, of course, the FOMC press conference after that at 1430. We do also have U.S. President Biden speaking tentatively after that, probably around those press conferences. That might change throughout the day, obviously, but that's really about all we've got going on. I say it like there's not much. FOMC days are typically pretty brutal. We'll see. All right. So far, we've got a very nice continuation to the upside on the NASDAQ, and again, this is the 15-minute chart, but like we've been seeing, we had that gigantic drop to the downside. It tried getting it to go back up, couldn't get it to go. Everybody gave up. So if we look at this overall move from top to initial bottom, the original drive, wow, look at that. Now, they didn't build a POC. POC's still up here, but you can see they packed a ton of volume in there. And the fact that it packed all that volume in right around that area, it's demonstrating that buyers obviously want to get something going in this zone. And if we push this a little further, let's go to current market. They have a shifted POC down at 13,960. So the assumption is that longs are in. Buyers are trying to get a bit more continuation to the upside. And if we can break below those lows and fail, which so far looks to be the case, we can see more continuation higher. So they're starting to clear the way, I guess, for the NASDAQ, but it's still got some road bumps in the way. We've got a few things of resistance that's going to have to work through. If we look at some previous legs, maybe just from the bottom to the top to see what traders were doing along the way. Here we built that POC smack in the middle. So even from that perspective, you can see why there's such a fight. We're just trying to figure out what they want to do from here. Is this accumulation underneath that average? Are these shorts now taking profit? Are longs a little bit nervous? Going to have to wait and see a little bit here. Over on the S&P, we've got some nice continuation back to the upside. Beginning from the leg on the 22nd, I think it just kind of makes more sense. We had that initial drive up into the 23rd before the weekend. My date is messed up. Awesome. Let me creep that forward. There we go. So we've got a nice continuation move back up, and that gives us a POC. And what happened when the market came back to that POC cluster? Well, pretty obvious. Demonstrated as support, and now buyers are trying to get this thing going higher. From that perspective, though, we've got some problems. They keep slapping their head into this resistance up at 41.85, and so far the buyers haven't even gotten a higher high. They're having a lot of problems here, and that's a pretty big concern. So, I mean, realistically, if it does go back up, I mean, I have to assume that all the buyers who are buying in the lows are probably going to take profit pretty quick. So those highs become, well, resistance. We'll see what they want to do. Then over on gold, got some halfway decent continuation to the downside of that gigantic leg. Jeez. Just that move down. Whoa. Massively bottom weighted on the volume. Obviously very defensive on the buy side, but they just couldn't get the job done. And now that it's broken underneath, you guessed it, that's where I'm looking for resistance to start stepping up. Buyers tried holding it. They lost it. They'll look to flip it once it starts getting back into those 72s, 73s. Let's continue volume forward, though, and see what they did on this next low. Oh, man. They really nailed it, too, because the POC shifted further up. It didn't shift further down. It shifted further up, which it means that the buyer stepped to the plate even more aggressively and then got slammed. POC shifted down just a little bit. So you can see generally they're building around this area. And then the market makes another new low, and they're kind of stuck back at those 79s. Still, actually, if we go all the way back to current price, the POC's still up there at 79. So looking for the market to rotate back up into that zone. The lowest point on the original drive was down here at 73.3. I would prefer to see resistance there initially. But if it does want to go further, then we've got 79 and everything else stacking up on the highs there. My DP levels are not correct. I'm going to have to fix that in a minute. Over on crude oil, we've got a pretty nice cycle to the upside in that giant reversal. Lower high. Big rotation back up. Right, so this lower high, this continuation up, maybe they're looking for a two-legged move. Well, you tell me, right? We're right on top of it. There's a big zone of contention up here. Doesn't necessarily mean the market has to turn around right this second, but we've got an undertow, we've got some obvious resistance up here. There's some things going on that are definitive concern as far as the buy side goes. Now, if we measure the volume from bottom to... well, the top just happened, so actually all the way to the highs. We've got a backweighted POC at 62.40. So you can see sellers were trying to sell up to this point at around 62.40. It appears as though most of them have given up or are potentially still stuck on the shorts at 62.40. And what do we have? Decreasing volume above that, profit taking. So if this was buyers in here, they're taking profit, and we haven't seen the sellers step back up to the plate yet. It's a little bit early, but if they do want to pull back, the defense zone, if they're going to re-support their longs, 62.40. If they're going to fail, then that would be the point that you would see it fail through, unless they shift the POC up. Inventory day is going to make today really awkward, but we'll see. On the euro, halfway decent movement to the upside, and then just it all fell apart. We've got a potential wedge that's kind of going on here, I guess. I mean, this thing's nasty looking. Originally, it looked like the wedge was here. Got a nice breakout, and this could still be the breakout pullback of that. But, man, as it stands, this thing is just a mess. Honestly, it might even make more sense to go like that. That's what's fitting at the moment, at least. If we're going to the nearer term. Wow. So what we need to see here is a little bit more bullish rotation back to the upside. The one thing that does stand out, fairly obvious, is that when the market came down and tried to break through that lows, they failed. So now that they've come back, they've demonstrated support again, and now inside support. So bulls, from a swing perspective, are going to be looking for longs here, knowing that their risk can be below the lows because their targets are back up towards those highs, that high zone of resistance. It gives a nice opportunity for a 2-to-1. So buyers will definitely be looking for that area as a continuation zone up. Looking at volume from top to the bottom that actually just formed, you can see that we've got the bottom weighted POC at 1.20935. If we go all the way to the current market, they've actually dropped it even further, 1.20830. So it's showing you really aggressively that buyers are trying to bottom weight the average to get the price to go back up again. They're trying to buy the pullback. So far, they haven't been successful in getting the move higher, but they're trying. Over on Bitcoin, nice quick little flush, followed up by a quick rally back up and smack into resistance again at around 55,000. This is a major objective. We know a lot of people are taking profit up in 55K. This, I mean, it's not been shy at all about putting volume in at 55. So everything is stacking in the zone, giving us a little bit of a heads up. We also have a massive undertow that's been going on for a while. That doesn't necessarily mean the market has to reverse, but it does tell us to expect a deeper pullback. In this case, there's barely been any pullbacks. So a deeper pullback, I guess in this case, would just be telling us to expect a pullback. So realistically, this dip that we've got going on, they were holding L1s, rallied back up. We're finally holding L1s again. If we get a snap back down and buyers show immediate response, like we close a wick in a bull bar or something that looks like that, even if there's a wick on top, it's fine. That would demonstrate a heck of a lot of support trying to come in there for a continuation off of that L1. If, however, they break through it, try holding support, but we see the break evens on the longs earlier getting out, and we shove a move down, the deeper pullback, right? Looking for the L2. Two-legged move back down into the L2 fits almost perfectly. I don't want to draw the volume on Bitcoin because I know it's going to mess my charts up. Same thing goes with Ethereum. We've got some really nice continuation to the upside. Gigantic shove all the way into the highs. But this whole drive higher has been dominated by a big old undertow. We just haven't seen a pullback. Again, this gives us a clue to expect a deeper pullback. If we're looking at the overall structure of what's been going on, I know we haven't technically even had a new low yet. We actually cycled off of this low with an L4, which is beautiful. They got the L4 into an L1, another continuation back up, couldn't even hit L1, pull back again, L1, all the way back up to new highs. I mean, it's very obvious we have an L1 bull trend going on. When the market does start pulling back, though, that's the heads up. We're seeing an undertow. If it starts pulling back, I'm expecting an L2, something just a little deeper. So that's kind of the mentality right now on Ethereum. It's not that I don't want to be a buyer. I just don't want to be a buyer way the heck up here. The opportunity to buy was on this flush. And even then it was a little bit shaky because it never really made a low. Just a little bit awkward over there. As you can see, the micro side of things that swing long. Hello? My charts are all frozen. Oh, are we coming back alive? Maybe? Kinda, sorta. Man, something is just wailing on my NinjaTrader. What in the world's going on? Everything was good for a minute. Oh, there we go. Oh, Lord, here it goes. Well, now it's all catching up to all the clicks and everything. Jeez, OP. All right. Anyway, with that out of the way, I don't know what the heck that was about. The swing that we were talking about yesterday on the long side, it did end up pulling back and allowed those buyers to build in a few more. Finally saw the profit objectives on the way up. Couldn't quite finish the job and failed over here. To be fair, a lot of buyers probably gave up underneath this, but I wanted to see if they just wanted to get another break-even juke. They didn't. It slid underneath the lows, took the stop out, ended up taking a really small loss on the secondary portion. Or, well, I guess in that case, that was like the fifth whatever of the move. Just couldn't get the job done. Although you can see immediately after getting stopped out, it jerked right back up again. So, go figure, right? Good old NASDAQ. So couldn't quite get the job done in the overnight session, and now we're just kind of hovering around this area. This could just be a warning, right? We kind of probed the lows. We told the sellers it's game over. They're giving them a chance to get out at break even, which right now arguably kind of looks to be the case. There's a heck of a lot of resistance here. And again, the Asian session, Euro session are stacked on top of each other. We're not really separating in that sense. But if we look at the bigger picture first on the daily, we do finally have a new high close that we can use. It's not much different, but it is just a little. I think. Right? Is that higher? The close, 14,024 to 59.50. Yeah. All right. We've got a long way to go until anything interesting happens there, but it's a new high. Give me 1 second. All right, we're back. Sorry about that. So as far as the April 16th was higher, yeah, there's not really much of a change. I mean, is it higher? Close 950. Oh no, the open. Sorry, the open 24.75. The close was at 24.75 is the highest. What's this one over here? 24 and 2. So technically this is a new one. Not by much. Sheesh. Like 3 ticks. I think literally. 24 to 24.75. Yeah, 3 ticks. So it is technically a new high, just not by much. That does mean that this is a refreshed L1, although to be fair, it's just basically the same zone as before. It hasn't really changed a whole lot. From a 60-minute perspective, if we look at the overall movement to the upside, we can see that buyers are attempting to buy into the pullback. This could also be attempted sellers trying to accumulate in the move higher. I'm not measuring anything beyond this high. So on this move up, sellers are trying to get it going. So keep that in mind. From the perspective of sellers, their average is short from here. They came back down into profitable territory, but it never really separated. Move back up. You can see some of them potentially even exiting at break-evens. Couldn't get the rotation back up. Came back down. Even a few more potential break-evens inside there. You can feel they would have. Came really close. Small little bull bar, kind of putting the pressure on a little bit. And then it dumps all the way back down. What do you think a lot of traders are going to do with their stops? They're going to put their stops to break even. Where do you think the market's going to come back to if hedge funds or somebody wants to accumulate a bunch of orders? Back to break even. That's why I'm not a huge fan of break even. I'd rather put it below a swing, says the guy who just got stopped out last night doing that. But, you know, these are the instances where this is why. In this case, it came back to that break even point and they're trying to pressure down. But notice, huge lack of follow through. Sellers are not getting anything done. There's like a brick wall right here and it just cannot push through this area. So as long as that support is being demonstrated here, I would assume, at least, that on this down move, we're seeing a low POC being built. Probably started off here. Yep. So longs are buying into the pullback at around the 960s or so. And as we continue into today, They haven't quite shifted the POC. Actually, not even close. They have a long way to go till they shift the POC. So they've got to get back above the 960s on the 60-minute in order for the bulls to take this back over, which makes sense because that would invalidate the sellers. So, perfect. Fair enough. Looking at the 15. Still haven't gotten that value pullback yet. If we look at it from that value perspective before, remember we were at from the top to bottom, was it 8.2, 8.3, something like that? I think it was actually 8.3 because my double measurement is 6.6, yeah. So the 8.3 pullback is still being defended. We're hovering right around that zone, but notice what is kind of happening right now. You can feel the pressure, right? The longs are in, they're good. Everything is solid, they're buying, and everything's hunky-dory, right? If we're looking at this move, realistically, this drive down, their stop placement would have been no larger than a negative 50% move. They are very unlikely going to want to see that go more than half that distance. So from a max risk perspective, their objectives couldn't even make it up to a 0.5 to 1. Scalpers didn't even get objectives. So knowing that not really anybody from the max risk perspective has been satisfied, we can look at this from an actual risk perspective. Who's been taken care of in that sense? Well, that would explain very obviously why there was such a rejection here. That was the 2 to 1. Huh. Weird. It's almost like these things all line up, right? So we know that these buyers who bought this area, they took profit. They're not long anymore. Or if they are long, they're long on, 80% smaller size. So when it comes back to break even, they're not necessarily, I mean, if they do defend, we'll see. In this case, it just obliterated that low. So the remainder that they're long, and if they didn't stop out, what do you think they're going to do when it comes back to the break even point? If it goes back above, I'm trailing my stop up to break even. Now, this thing ain't coming back. And that's why it jerked around this area. It's still stuck in this area. We haven't separated yet. Again, we need to separate away from this area as proof. So not only are we seeing that on a volume perspective, we're also seeing it on a value perspective. Now, notably, one other thing to consider. On this previous drive lower, this previous leg lower was a two-legged correction back, nearly perfect. The POC that they formed was at 915. Cough, cough. Notice anything standing out just a little. So in terms of swings, honestly, you could almost see a perfect scenario here where the market slides down at the open, because you know how the open works, right? You get a big pierce through. It's a lower low, but it's a higher low. It's a higher low in the sense of the major, but it's a lower low in the sense of the local. And then we close a nice bull bar that looks something along these lines. That would be a perfect world scenario for buyers to try to kick this thing all the way back up, and not just kick it back up, but also dumpster all of the shorts who are trying to get it to break back below value for the double down. That would be a huge context shift. We haven't had that yet, obviously, but right now, if we look at the 15 in the nearer, at least, we can see that sellers are potentially feeling like they're on the back foot a bit. There's a heck of a lot of fight around this area yet, though. Maybe sellers got suckered in underneath the lows. It's tough to say right now. Pretty early. If they did, they're under pressure. Let's look at this most recent correction. That's where they built their POC. So that's where they're short from. 935. They're trying to get it to go down. They're barely in profit right now. I gotta move this over here. Otherwise, I don't see it. About the NASDAQ high, do I have the same data as you? Yours is significantly lower. As far as my data feed that I am using on my 1440 minute chart, which, by the way, could definitely also cause some differences if you were looking at a daily chart versus a 1440 minute. I am utilizing a 1440 minute because that's how many minutes are in a day, and I'm using the CME US Index Futures ETH. If you're using something different than that, then your closes and opens will definitely look different. Doge pulling back a little bit. The area of interest more so for me on Doge should be around 29 cents or so. See the buyers redefend that previous low somewhere around that area. What do you think about Doge where it is now at around the 30-cent mark? I mean, it would be a higher low for the earlier longs that built in at the 29-cent mark. I mean, I know we're bickering over a penny here, but a penny when you're talking about leveraged instruments can be an incredible amount of money. So 29 cents is more... It's just a larger zone of structure. I would rather wait for something a little bit deeper. I don't have anything against the 30 to 31 cent zone where it is now. It's just, it feels like it's a bit early. Let's see, what's going on this Euro session? Oh, technically we do have a little swing high in there, huh? A little guy in there. We've got a rotation off of L3, which is acceptable, although not preferable. Rotated all the way back down, came back up into an L3 again. Not clean in the least. Sellers are riding the struggle bus. Notably, the one thing that does stand out is that if sellers were trying to sell this L1 area, notice where all of the wicks are? Especially that one right there, seems like all of those shorts, if they were shorts, that would be the assumption in this case, looking for a follow-through leg, they got out, or they have been getting out for quite a while. $9.28, open right around the corner. All right, open 1 minute away. All right, I think it's Femex. Femex running with NinjaTrader. Boy, it does not like that. How about over here? If I put it on a different screen. There we go. That seems better. Which isn't a good sign because that means my graphic card is not doing well. Lovely. L3 sellers potentially still trying to get things going to the downside. I don't know what happened to my window over here. Here comes the open. My charts are still messed up. Well, that one was at least. We are holding resistance back on the L3, and sellers are trying to put the pressure back on again. I'll just move that one over there. Bulls showing more continuation back to the upside, which is really putting a lot of pressure on these shorts because these sellers have been trying to get this thing going for quite a while, and they have not been successful in the least. This 35 area, 35 continues to demonstrate support. We haven't really broken away from it. The market's still just super stuck here. And the 930s makes a little bit more sense. That's back down towards the lows. Or they'll just push right on through. See if we can get a little bit of a push back into the 930s for sellers to repress down to the lows. I didn't get a fill. You serious? I missed it and it dropped 10 points. I tried selling the ask on that quick pop back up into the 930s and it dodged me. Oh, man. Bummer. We have a secondary retest of the 930s, and sellers are trying to get a follow-through breakdown. Remember, this is where the earlier longs, if they were trying to get going, this is where they were doing it from. It's not looking so good for them. Oh, what a fight. Oh, no, buyers don't like that at all. They got to get this bull bar, and they got to get it to trigger. Get this thing juking out of here. A lot of swing longs, a lot of options, etc. We'll be looking for longs down in this area, looking for a continuation. Oh, and again, I just remembered. I know my levels are wrong. Sellers look like they're trying to get another continuation leg down. Oh. Bulls potentially suckered in above that bull bar and then immediately proven wrong. All right, let's see here. Drawing tools, got to update it. Yeah. There we go. Sellers trying to get more continuation back to the downside, failing to break a new low. We've seen this a lot lately, where they juke the low by a few ticks, but there's all the wicks are on the highs. Sellers are pressuring. They did pierce the lows. So in this case, we have an L3, which is way up here, into another L3, barely, and then another continuation back to the downside. Short-term sellers will be looking for an immediate rejection off the 907.50s now that we've broken a new low and broken below the Euro session. Like to see if they can get a quick jump back up into that L1. As far as previous areas, well, now we have that move to the upside, which totally failed. Didn't even come close, though. That's miles away. Looking for sellers to continue downward pressure off of the L1. That's also around the Euro session lows. Tried getting a fill on the on the original short, and it just totally skipped past me. Not fast enough. First 5-minute bar is behind us now. And this time around, I'm watching you, NASDAQ. The last time you did this crap right at when I was marking this up. $41.82 on the S&P. I only got one of them. There we go. Sellers will have the initial push down back to Euro session lows for scalps. Continuation sellers will be looking for the breakdown below that area to see if they can drive back down towards at least the 900s and potentially pressure this a lot further. Downside objective, I mean, preferably would be to get through the 900s. So far, so good. Sellers still continuing to try to put the pressure on, but they've got to follow through. Still nothing. Whoo, lordy. That's a big bear bar. I want to see what the response is to this. There's almost no ticks while this market's moving back up. It seems like buyers are stuck right now. I'm going to add another one. See if you can get that flush back down and these buyers running scared, especially if they start breaking through the lows. Very nice breakdown. There's the first target. See if they can get another continuation push. I want to see them break back down towards the 95s. Still potentially hitting the break-evens. What a fight. All right, I'm going to jump ship on that. I don't like that movement. It's starting to close back above it. I wanted this to stay under it. And the rejection that I wanted it to be here. But they held that higher low a lot further up. It's not to say that this congestion can't push down again. It's just this did not form the way that I wanted it to. The original plan was for a quick 2-to-1 back to the downside with an additional contract for a scalp. That's not what happened. So we kind of have to reevaluate what it's doing here. Or at least I do. That didn't follow through the way I wanted. Even though it did work. Another nice bear bar to the downside with a very nice trap. That might be all sellers need to try to drive this down, but I'd like to see this kick a new low at least. There they go. Now we've gotten out of this kind of like little inside funky bit. A pop back above the 901s, 902s would likely get sold back down on aggression. Unless they don't. And then it continues down anyway. Follow through breakdown. Give me 1 second. All right. Sellers with more continuation down. They did hold on the L1, although a little bit trippy-trappy inside there. That's all good. We've got another continuation back down. I'm not so impressed with another L1. But I think a lot of traders with the way that this formed up here might still give it a shot initially. So scalpers could be looking for a very quick rejection bounce off of it. But I don't really want to see it churn back higher. kind of a bear bar, I guess. Pierce through, but no volume up here whatsoever. Woo, big pop through the highs. Much more likely that we see this juke back up towards a high. This would be an exit point, very obviously, just take the loss. But I like this point for an increased risk L2 back to the downside. It's going to take a lot of these earlier shorts by surprise, and they're going to be looking to dive into this for a quick move down. So if we can get this to juke back down into the area around the L1. Okay, well, it was there for a second. Oh, geez, I didn't mean to buy it there. Well, I hit bid and it jumped up like 7 points. Okay. Well, my average is up on the L2 now, but I'm going to have to manage that a little bit differently. That exit was gross. I'm going to jump ship. Yeah, this isn't moving the way that I wanted it to. I would rather not be in this at the moment and let it kind of work itself out here. Obviously, again, we know the context here. Shorts just got... Whoop, I didn't mean to move that down. Shorts just got massacred who were trying to sell lower and didn't take the exits or you know, if they were looking for... I guess if they were scalpers. I mean, how far did that move? At least for my entry, it moved in my favor. It doesn't help at all. 0.02%. It moved 12 ticks. So... very unlikely, aside from like maybe the 10-tick scalpers, that sellers were satisfied. So basically every seller on the planet just got hammered to the upside. What I want to see up here is this accumulated above the highs and we see another leg down, which right now the POC is very top weighted, or do we break above this and likely see another push back up to where the market had found balance before? Over, let's go to there. Back up towards like the 29s. Just trying to close above it. Sellers are having a heck of a time here. They just have to make a quick lower low or something along those lines. They have the POC in the right spot for sellers. In the short term, at least. They keep closing above it, though. Big old undertow the whole way across the bottom. If anything, I would rather at least see a pullback for the buyers to pick up at 750. I think this is enough momentum to the upside that a lot of sellers have lost all faith that it's even going to come back to the lows. I think most sellers are thinking inside the Euro session lows, somewhere around that zone, and you can see them jumping ship still. Now we're back above that 915 area. So a pullback to 915 for scalpers would be nice, or if we can get a dip back down even more preferably to 77s or so, that would be down in the... Sorry, 77s, 907s rather. That would be back up towards these highs where we obviously had a huge amount of volume that came in there. Shorts are stuck. This is why you exit when you know you're wrong. Back up to the L3. This would be the third time that an L3 has been tested. Very, very typically, a lot of sellers will be looking for that repetition. I don't see the market going back down again after a move like that. Not the way that it happened. That got way too many shorts stuck in. Nice divergence. Yep. All right, now that I got a second to breathe here, the 935 candle, this guy right here. 2950. Oh boy, that doesn't help. This is where the market decided it wanted to ramp up to, huh? All right, breaking back through. That's very important because now we're breaking back through some of the larger volume clusters, right? If you measure from the top to the bottom, the volume node's still in the middle at around the 30s, and it's popping above that. So swing longs, like we've been talking about all morning, they're going to be buying down here, options, etc. They're picking up this area. Well, not up here anymore, but down while the market was falling by the dip. It's just tough to do at the open on the future side of things. Speaking of by the dip, I really want Doge to dip down to 29 cents. More continuation above that 29.50, and holy crap, total scream fest above those highs. Now we're back to the L4. If swing shorts are looking for an entry, L4s, L5s, that's where they're going to be jumping in because the risk is significantly lower. They're going to be able to sell L4, L5 with stops above the high, but their targets will be way down at the bottom, easily 2 to 1, sometimes significantly higher. So this is where shorts will be trying to get something going as well. Now, on a 125 tick, or like a 100 tick or something that's maybe a quarter the size of this, you can see this a little bit more clearly. But they did break above, juke back, and just went screaming off that 929.50. Huge zone of interest there. It was just there for such a small amount of time that likely when it comes back, there's still going to be support there. Still interested. While it's hovering here for a second, looking across the board, NASDAQ. I mean, look at these wicks on the bottom. Who would want to be short right now? You know? Like, they're obviously getting squeezed. That's why longs on the option side are in, because it's just blatant. So far, I mean, obviously it's incredibly bullish. We have had barely any pullback at all. But a dip back to the 29.50s would be nice. We just tapped settlement again. Don't mind the caffeine. Come on, give a nice little flush. Give a little bit of a dip. Definitely a consideration. 100% with you, Rebecca, yeah. We got a ways to go for that to happen. Probably a good, like, 15, 20 candles yet. 10 o'clock right around the corner. Don't forget today is FOMC day, so early in, early out. A lot of traders are trying to pre-position. The earlier longs who are buying the lows with options are sitting in the, well, they're sitting in a very healthy place right now, especially looking at the 15-minute chart. If you were to tell me, hey, you're short right now, this is what it looks like, I would ask you, you know, where's the exit button? How do I close this? It is not in the right place. They do still have 8.5 minutes. A lot can happen in 8.5 minutes. But I wouldn't be having the warm fuzzies right now, that's for sure. Further continuation up, although the majority of the POC was built up at these previous highs. There's likely a lot of sellers looking for a continuation leg back to the downside, myself included. I realized it wasn't going and jump ship, but you can definitely tell we're not alone. A lot of volume traded hands there trying to get that next leg down. They couldn't get it done. So if those shorts are still stuck in and they don't build a POC up, which it looks like they might here in just a minute, then that would be a nice little bounce point if it pulls back. Yeah, the fast one's already there. That already happened. At least on like a 125 tick. Something quick. So far, L4 sellers are still holding the market. They haven't shifted the POC, but you can see that volume getting real close. They don't have to do a whole lot more, and all of a sudden, the shorts who were stuck aren't stuck anymore. Oh, that's really bad for them. Popping back above it. There they go again. They couldn't shift the POC, although to be fair, when it pulls back, it'll probably put a POC there. That volume doesn't have to go very much further up. Notice what they did. Remember yesterday we were talking about backfilling this little gap that they had? I thought that would have been good enough, which obviously did create a very nice bounce. But we're back again, and it's showing support again. This is also possibly trapping in shorts who tried selling underneath that previous bear bar. And now that we have a higher high, and that's no small higher high. That's a big higher high. That's a pretty big clue. Man, these sellers are getting ran over right now. Sure just left a lot on the table. Oh yeah, this thing's screaming right now. But it's happening in these just boom, there it goes. Like, oh, cool. There's 17 points. Just materialized on my screen. Fantastic. Like when I hit buy bid and it jumped up 7 points. Whoops. Even a shortcut key wasn't fast enough. More continuation to the upside. Sellers are very obviously stuck. We already know that. As far as from where, let's back this up a little bit further and get the volume all the way at the top. Nothing really new. Let's get the whole picture. I'm back at 9:30. 5-minute POC volume is 2950. $943.75. It's not going to take much for them to shift a POC in the short term for this leg to the upside. You can see that volume building right there. How do I get in Discord? I thought you were already in it the last time I saw. Yeah. Last time, well, I was on the 24th. So the easiest, I always have a problem because it says my username already exists. Let me see here. Can I send you? I don't want to accidentally put you in timeout. I was going to see if I could send a message just to you, but I guess not. Yeah, give it a shot again. Try it, and if it doesn't work, just join again. I'll boot the other one so you've got a fresh go. But Sometimes Discord's funky like that. Let me see. So, yeah, all of them have had the same usernames. We are seeing profit taking above these highs. So as far as a pullback goes, there's nothing that I want to do up here. But if we can get a dip back down to like the 45s. Also kind of curious on this pullback before they went into the close and chopped all their heads off. The break-even point was hovering right inside there. Big run all the way up. Finally, the Euro session high is now pulling back just a little bit. As far as volume goes, we can very obviously see sellers tried building up into the 915s. They lost their grip above that. Since then, we saw a bit at around the 930s, didn't do much, and then profit taking all the way above the open. Yeah, and I mean, this could even be that bounce from that earlier swing. Because look where it is. We're right back to the original POC. The beginning of the day at 3 in the morning. Like, wait a minute, how the heck did they get here already? Market continuing to pull a little bit further up. Just a giant ripper of a move to the highs. Just going to have to FOMO shortly. Seriously, I know, right? Just let me know when you do that, though, because that's probably going to be close to the high. Hashtag just saying. I know at least my luck, whenever I FOMO into it, it's always the frickin' top. FOMO with maybe 1 share of the QQQ on Robinhood, so you don't have to pay. So you don't have to pay. No commissions. Maybe not Robinhood. Maybe somebody else. Maybe just not stocks, you know? Those regulated markets. I don't like the fact that they can make it so that you can't sell a stock. 10 o'clock. We don't really have any news at 10 o'clock per se. The news at 10:30. Half deviation down now, half up. Possible. I mean, this thing is screaming to the upside. We know shorts are stuck massively. There hasn't even been, like, hasn't even pulled back half of an L1. Like, what's been the biggest pullback? This little micro pullback was technically an L1. I mean, that's it. There's been nothing. There will be a pullback. There always is. The major zone of interest that I'm looking at right now is just underneath settlement around the 945s, 944s. You can see that volume node already being built up. And if they can shift the POC down into that area away from 915, then that would demonstrate at least that buyers are attempting to get a supportive bounce back up and get that negative half to positive half move. Looking across the board here, gold is starting to creep its way back up into this this kind of zone of interest here. Got to see what they're able to do. If they're able to pop back above this or if they want to try to hold down. The next spot's obviously the 779s, but Actually, let's go all the way back. Technically, that's the high. 780. Not much of a difference. Crude's still cruising to the upside. All right, now look what's happening. Volume is beginning to demonstrate accumulation volume now. We're starting to see sellers trying to potentially build that third node. Although we kind of have 1, 2, and 3 already. That third one is kind of in the middle and just got hammered. So we can kind of, potentially think that there might be one all through here that they're trying to build up. A shorter term high maybe in place. There we go. Nice quick little flush down into this low. Couldn't get it. A little more? They're playing hardball right now. 959s somewhere down there. It's like a curse. Every time I want a zone, it's like the NASDAQ knows. Like, nah. Man alive. Day after day, NASDAQ, you vindictive thing. More accumulation volume still building. It's like 3 days in a row that crap's happened now. I'm starting to think, check my hedges out front. Like, what's going on here? Little bit of a dip back down. The S&P has yet to break a previous candle's low. We currently only have a minute left. That is really bad timing. But if they are able to go down there and then close the candle up, within like the next 30 seconds or so, and demonstrate a fairly weak candle, that would be a nice point for buyers to try to kick it back up. But if we start running out of time, then that's going to have to shift a little bit. $30 seconds now. All right, I'm going to shift. Not enough time. See if they can flush down to the 8350s for traders to filter in. NASDAQ's just playing with my hopes and dreams. Fairly weak bear bar and not likely to prove anything, so I do definitely like those 8450s again. That would be a trigger in for shorts, which are very unlikely to succeed, and that would also be a trap underneath the previous bull bar. It's a great spot. Also starting to see a bit of a flush here on Doge. Still has a long way to go, feels like at least. And now in the shorter term, Doge has actually shifted the volume. I'm going to have to peel off of the 29s. We'll just have to wait and see once it gets there instead. POC has shifted to the upside, 970. Just. And now that's failing too. Uh-oh. Shorts are trying everything they can to get this thing to go back down to let them out at break even, but it's just not working. Even if they build a POC all the way at the top. When you see sellers coming in at the top, it's more difficult for me to buy the L1. Oh, for sure. Yeah, I am a lot less inclined to want to be an L1 buyer right now. I would rather see a deeper pullback. Now, just because the POC has shifted doesn't necessarily mean they won't come down to some of those previous areas. In fact, again, given that this move from down to up was so aggressive in the way that it reversed, if we go from the top to, let me get rid of that a minute, all the way down to the lows, I mean, very viably, we could see a pull all the way back down to the 930s, or somewhere around there, maybe the 940s or in that zone. But right now, look what's happening. I mean, sellers are trying. They're even getting the top-weighted POC again, and it's failing again. They just can't seem to get it to go. See if we get a quick little flush back to the 970s. That'll be the last ditch for sellers, is to say, screw it, get me out. See if they can get a little dip into the 970s. That's going to be the zone of interest for a quick pop. Mostly on the scalp side, but they might be able to juke it a little bit further. Really? Okay, there we go. So from the swing perspective, this is the last ditch where sellers are like, all right, fine. We've got the POC here at 970. It's got to go down now, and if it goes back up again, it's game over, right? Now, keep in mind, potentially looking for a deeper dip. So this pullback, although it is low side weighted and has a good potential for a continuation in the short term, I'm not willing to go in much more than like one, because this very well could easily flush back down towards the 62s, that larger point of interest. That unfortunately missed me by a tick. Still fighting over the POC in the 970s. What is this little inside bar on the S&P? Starting to see the slight extra follow through here down towards the 60s. It hasn't, it's gone about halfway. VVP area is just a little bit lower in the 59s and over, oof, right there, that overflush. Very nice zone of interest for buyers to try to kick it back off of those lows for a continuation up. We do have the POC shifted at 970, so the buyers need to make it happen now or they lose their grip. And just to hedge bets, I'll reduce on the way up around that break-even point. And if it starts failing below that, I'm not really going to be much more interested. It's got to move up relatively quick because of that POC shift. Can they finish the job? The Euro session high. Volume shift. It's got to get above the 970s. All right, I'm out. Back to break even. Couldn't get the job done. I'll sit on the sidelines and see if they can break through those 70s a little bit later. The next zone of interest, if they are going to give us a slightly larger or better inside pullback, is going to be off of the lows. Man, that's way far down there. Everything is way far down. At the moment, L1 buyers are attempting, but they're still demonstrating accumulation volume. The next zone of interest that could potentially build a POC would be back in the L2s, which is right around settlement. When you see sellers coming in at the top... Oh, no, I already got that one, sorry. What you say is the sellers are in profit because the price is below the POC. Right, that's the assumption. So, as an example, when I'm looking at the 970s, the POC is shifted to the upside, and the way that it did it was in a manner that the POC was here, then shifted up to here, and then shifted up to here. So that could be buyers who are taking profit, but if that were taking profit, then why is volume increasing? That's not what that would demonstrate. That would demonstrate that there's accumulation, or at least buyers, if it is buyers, they're taking profit from all different time frames. And that's creating this massive influx of accumulation volume instead. So the reason why I'm looking at it in that sense is because contextually, that's the way that it makes sense. Sellers would be short from the 970s because they've been trying to get it to go short all morning. Now that they've finally gotten it up here, if this doesn't go and it goes back up, it's game over. L1s are still defending. That's a really nice bounce back to the upside. Curious to see what they do in the 970s still. S&P now too, huh? Yeah, you just got to get it in there. 84.75. My entry's at 84.50. That's fine. That's all good. S&P, frustrating bugger. More continuation back to the upside. See if they can give a quick little flush dip back to the L1 as a secondary confirmation support. They're re-challenging the 970s. The big money's watching you, I know, right? Just a speck on the windshield to the infinite money crowd. Can you summarize your trade plan? When we go into a little bit more of the training time side of things, it's relatively straightforward. It's more based on the psychological side of things. In the purest definition of summary, I am looking for psychological turning points. It's about as simplistic as you can make it, I suppose, but the process is obviously a little bit more extended than that. $970 holding to the tick, or did it miss it by a tick? Sheesh. That's where sellers want to hold it down from. So far, we've got the L1. Buyers will be looking for a quick little snap back into the 64 for an attempted pop higher. But again, the POC right now, price is underneath it. So that's going to cause some issues. If buyers can shut them down, then they're going to have a lot of trouble. Buyers popping back above the 70s. That's a big problem for the sellers, but candle's got to close. Oof. Closed at 70 quarter. Not enough to change much. Now, if we do get that secondary push down, then we've got the two-legged correction lower, which offers buyers back up to the tick at the top of L2. Unfortunately, it doesn't really line up with many other volume nodes, though. The volume nodes are a bit further down towards the 3s. Big bear bar back down again, attempting to hold the 970s. The response to that bear bar is going to be really important. Actually, I don't even think it matters if I pull this all the way forward. The POC's in the same spot. Yeah. Lot of volume coming in the 970s. Popping back above those 970s. It's like, all right, it's your turn. Hit me in the jaw. All right, now it's my turn. Doge catching some pretty big movement to the downside here. Sellers with a little bit of a pushback, a little more interested from the scalp perspective around the 63 quarters or lower, though. And we're still holding the 970s as volume, so it's tough to want to be a buyer yet. Is your POC set from the start of the US session? Because my POC is not shifted. My POCs are drawn from a lot of different places. The first POC that I'm looking at right now with the one stuck at 970 is drawn from the low that started at 940. That's a very nice bull bar to the upside. I really like that for the potential long. The bull bar hasn't triggered yet, so this is an earlier entry. But if they jump above that bull bar, shorts, it's game over. Still not willing to do much more than one, obviously. It's still forcing like L1 buys way up at the top. But objective would be back up towards the next zone. Two to one is still inside the highs at 80.50, so that would be the preference, at least. I would still love that little bit of a dip down into these 62.50s. I just don't know that I'm going to get it. $63 L1 previous POC 62. I mean, everything's stacked right inside there. Let's give a quick little snap and actually hit it. Knowing that there is a potential pending L2, again, keeping size on the smaller end of things, I would like to eventually, if it does want to pull back to an L2, get my average down to that point. But I like this point of interest around the L1 for the continuation break to the upside, especially if sellers are trying right now and it just gets annihilated. That move on the 15-minute chart is enough for me to totally disregard the seller's attempt. Until they show up with more proof, at least. There we go. Quick little snap back down to the L1, although it hasn't hit the POC area yet. There we go. Secondary objective now with that in mind should allow us to be able to filter in inside of the highs. Still haven't really gotten the flush on Doge. I would like to see it in the lower 29s, but... nice little flush underneath. So likely the first pop back up into the top of the L1 zone is where buyers are going to want to see further continuation. Otherwise, the deeper dip down to L2 still makes more sense. They can go a little lower. 55s? The reason why I'm sitting on the sidelines a little bit more on this pullback, I know I'm trying to build into a swing, but I know that I also don't want to make my job harder if we do actually get the pullback. So the more contracts I add this far up, the more work I'm going to have to do on the pullback. So I'll leave it as is for right now. Nice bear bar on the S&P. L2 is just underneath the 50s, but there's a VVP at 49.50, 49.75. And then the big zone of interest is going to be in the 943s. And then from previous, well, we might get that drop right into the L2s here. Hold on. Not quite. Technically, the POC is a little bit lower, 44 quarter. L2's above it. We've got settlement kind of in the middle. Give me a little bit of a dippy dip. We're hovering right around that measured move territory, which is making this incredibly difficult to actually hit the L2. Just a little more. Okay, NASDAQ, I get it. Did that come one tick away again? Just rubbing salt in the wound? 49 quarter, 49, yeah. One tick away again. Nice. Thanks, NASDAQ. Oh, Murphy's Law, you're killing me. All right, well, I'm not going to change my objectives. They're still the upside. But I was hoping to be able to build in a little bit more down here. Now, we do have a little bit more proof that the low is hovering around this 45 zone, but... Oops, that was the wrong chart. Well, we do have crude oil inventories right around the corner here in about a minute and a half. So again, the anticipation for crude inventories is that it's going to be a slightly bearish number. But at the moment, it appears as though a lot of the sellers have tried to build in towards around the 6240s and they've been disproven. So even if it is a bear number, I would be very concerned about a quick flush back to those 40s. That would allow the sellers who were wrong down here a chance to get out of break even. And that would be basically bearish news being received as bullish, getting a nice little bounce off of that zone. So 6240s, if they get a little bit of a pushback, that could be really interesting. There we go. Wasn't able to do a whole lot on that low. Nice continuation down. So again, my job right now, I want to try to get my average as close to the L2 zone as possible. But we're still a little bit early to the party, so I don't want to hit the hammer too aggressively. So I am going to be looking to try to exit just a few of these on small pops and look to try to reposition better. A little lower. I couldn't get that fill, but a little dip down into those 44s. Crude inventories coming out. It's the second time now. Big continuation pop to the upside. Just as a side note, the number for the inventories at 10:30 actually came out at a positive 0.09. So, like, totally opposite of what was expected on the API. We can see that reflected in price, but crazy. There we go. Now we're starting to dig back down into the L2. Again, I still want to... I'm not content with where my average is, so I'm going to accept the loss on some of these. But I'll just look to sell inside pops and then rebuy on inside dips. Actually, not going to have to do a whole lot, really. Not going to need those anymore. On this aggressive bull run up on the NASDAQ, there really wasn't anything over an L1 pullback. Will there be anything deeper, like an L4, a shallow pullback to an L2? The first assumption, whenever you've got an L1 trend that's going up and 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 up, that eventually, and it's usually preceded by some form of a divergence or a heads up, a volume shift, something, to expect a little bit of a deeper pullback. That doesn't take away from the overall trend. It just tells you, you know, hey, you might want to be a little bit careful. A deeper pullback is potentially likely right around the corner. Or at least sooner than later, right? There's talk this summer of gas stations may run out of gas shortages because not enough truck drivers. What? How does that? Gas shortage because there's not enough truck drivers? I don't follow. But, I mean, either way, it's fairly obvious that crude is bullish right now. And the inventories are definitely helping it. A lot of the news would have anticipated this to push down on it, right? That was kind of the expectation. But it came out bullish. It's like, oh, right. Dipping down into the L3s. Now we've got my average hovering right around the bottom of L2. It's churned into L3, but very likely when you have these deeper dips, especially after such a strong move up, we already know buyers are going to be interested. The difference is the L4 or L3. If it starts getting down into L5s, then I'm going to start positioning to get out completely. It's dipping back further than I would have wanted it to, but realistically, the upside objectives still remain the same, back up in towards the value highs, back around the 65s. This 2950 area is a huge zone. This pullback area is massive. And that's why I said, you know, I'll accept okay if it goes down to like L4, but this is the area where I really, now that I didn't think it was going to get through L2, but we're right in this zone now. Big flush. Woo, lordy. All right, well, we'll be able to get the average down a little bit further here. It's back down towards the bottom of L3, although these seats are starting to get pretty expensive. Upside objective at the moment would be to reach out back up towards, measuring from top to bottom, 69s-ish. I still like the Euro session highs more. I don't want to try to challenge through that. It doesn't make any sense to challenge that. See if you can hold on to this until tomorrow. If it actually wants to keep me in, unlike last night. We're right back at that same point, side note. Just throwing that out there. We're right back at the same spot that it stopped out the earlier ones at the lows. like to the tick. Oops. If this starts V bottoming and not giving any pullbacks, I don't want to lighten the load too much. I mean, maybe around the 946s, I guess, but I'd really like to see where this can start churning from. $41.82 on the S&P is also hitting. Yeah, I got stopped out of the swing yesterday. I tried holding on to it. I even gave it a little bit of wiggle room with the stop below the low, and the Rotten Pecker stopped me out in the overnight. I thought I was safe. I mean, but 2 in the morning, it was way the heck up here. C'est la vie. Nothing you can do about it. Retest back into the L4. Sorry, but I'm short again. You don't have to apologize. You do you, man. I'm happy I finally got a dip. That parked my average basically right on top of L4, huh? Okay. For now. All right. Anyway, now that I've had to deal with the NASDAQ throwing a loop around here a little bit, what was the one? Can you summarize it? So my approach to trading as a whole is to look for psychological areas of interest, but I do it on 2 different factors. Obviously, the NASDAQ, you'll notice the way that I'm trading this is significantly different from the way that I was trading over here, right? Or over here. Sorry, not over there. Over here. It's a totally different approach, right? I mean, you can see it. That's fairly obvious. So the difference here is that I'm looking to be a scalper with the potential of maybe we get a swing. Right? I'm in the shorter term. The time of day has a big part in that. But my objective remains the same. I'm still looking for major turning points to hold and major turning points to reverse, etc. So with those major turning points, those are coming from the dailies, the 60-minute, the 15-minute chart. That's where we divulge from the top down in creator points of interest. So if you were to look from that, step 1 would be create zones of interest from technical analysis on I'll just say top down, right? So whatever charts you consider top down, everybody's different there. Once I've got that area of interest, I want to see, is there a psychological story behind why this zone is interesting? And if there is a psychological zone or a reason behind that, really? Why did it jump way up there? Okay. And if there is, then you have to move to the faster time frame and locate the entry. And again, this is all based on either scalp or swing. So it's a very simplistic mentality to the approach. Obviously, there's a lot to it, but I think that's the case for pretty much anything trading, really. So when I'm scalping, my primary objective typically, if you were to break it down into a risk-reward scenario, my goal when I'm scalping is high probability, right? So I'm willing to trade off my risk factor, so taking on more and more and more risk, to increase the probability. You can also do that if you're building into swing positions, which is what I'm doing here. But from a scalper's perspective, like the S&P, you'll see me buy one and then buy another one and then buy another couple underneath that. It's increasing my probability because all I'm looking for is a 4 tick rather scalp. You're not looking for much. Or if you're on the NASDAQ, it'd be like a 10-tick scalp. It doesn't have to go very far. Obviously, I'm looking for a lot more than a 10-tick scalp here, so the approach is slightly different. You go into it with the mentality of what I want to see. Originally, while the market was building around here, I wanted to see them get back above and then continue. They didn't. But we already mitigated that risk, or at least I did mitigate that risk by taking smaller size with the intention of buying a little bit lower and a little bit lower. But once it starts breaking through this L1, I'm looking for the L2. That was the big one, right? I want to buy here, but that failed. When that failed, that's when I start feathering positions, getting out, buying a few more, because I still like the dip. From a larger perspective, is a major zone of support. But in the shorter term, my original intention of the trade was wrong, so I need to mitigate risk and exit. That's why you'll notice my position size typically doesn't go much above certain sizes, depending on what I'm looking to risk in a certain area. And of course, as pretty much anyone who's been in the room for longer than a few minutes knows, the perpetual nightmare word of context. Crude oil continuing to go up, 64.14. Bitcoin pulling back, getting a little bit closer. Euro chopping through the top. Gold is still stuck. Yikes. And again, you can see why I like this area from the larger perspective when you zoom out a little bit further. This is the potential lower high before that deeper continuation leg. Got the first drive up, the deep move, the next leg up. Well, actually. Boop, boop. And even if they go sideways, the objective is still hovering up here. If they start cracking below here, then I've got to give up on it. So we are after 10:30, actually going on 10:45. Feel free to go into training time and get those questions in. We'll get those covered for you. And then we'll wrap it up. What about Litecoin and Bitcoin Cash? Will it go lower, and what are the buy zones? Give me 1 second here. Let me get... Not Doge. What'd you say? Litecoin and Bitcoin Cash? Litecoin on something a little further out than a 5-minute chart, please. So there's some obvious problems that happened here with Litecoin. From the top to the bottom originally, they had their POC way up at the top. So buyers got stuck buying super high and sat through the entire pullback. Once they started creating these higher lows in the scenario in here, they were able to build their average down lower. Sound familiar? That's actually what I'm doing right now. But that couldn't get going either. And once that started failing and rolled back down, that's where a lot of buyers start giving up. And you can see it reflected in this giant bear bar. But that zone is still interesting. Let's get it a little bit closer here. So when the market returns to that area, I want to see, what do they do? Do they break above it? Do they fail? Do they get stuck? What happens? And here they hit it, they broke down, chopped up above it, failed, and now they're holding it as resistance. I mean, if I wanted to be a buyer, I wouldn't want to do it right this second, you know? Maybe a little bit lower, a two-legged correction, a little bit more of a pullback, something along those lines, which you can see pretty straightforward happening right there to, let's say as an example, this was the high right now. That would put support at around like 240-ish. If you look at the volume cluster from that low to the high, oh, no way. That's also where the POC is. So, you know, just stacking a few things. No big deal. And then what was the other one? Bitcoin Cash? Bcash. Where are you at? Bcash. There we go. So this, if we go back a little bit further, we've got their major POC cluster, and the issue with Bcash has already kind of happened. They've obviously rejected that point, and that's a bit of a problem. If longs were buying into this move and they got dumped on and they're utilizing this to exit, well, then realistically, I would at the very least expect a two-legged correction back down, and potentially maybe even a three-legged pulse, which would put price back down towards that previous congestion back in the 800s to 780s. So Bitcoin Cash, I think, has got a few more issues I'm not as big a fan of. Litecoin looks a little bit better. Now, if they can crack back above this zone in the 900s, and I mean better than they did before, like actually get above it, then sure, definitely, that's a nice buy zone. But until that, right now, it's in a little bit of tough water. Nice bear bar back down. I'll wait until we get back to the bottom of the euro. They should be able to get there. Yeah, there we go. Nice flush down through the euro session lows. Again, mitigating a little bit and bringing things down into a slightly more favorable territory. Although I do like where my average is roughly. I would like to see a bit more proof. So I'll continue mitigating while it's going lower to try to adjust my average in a better location. But not too much, because if it goes screaming out of here, I don't want to be holding a super tiny bag. These seats were expensive. Crude oil is still going up, 64.32 now. That's crazy. Straight up. Ethereum's almost back at the highs again. Bitcoin's still pulling back a bit. Here again, my ninja charts are all frozen up. All right, last call for questions and we'll wrap it up. Still babysitting this. I would like to try to draw my average a little bit further down now that they've proven the L5, but realistically, the way that they're holding right now, if that starts churning too much higher, that might be the last chance down here. So I don't want to lighten the load too much yet either. Not really interested in taking any majority profit off until we start getting back up into like the L2s, L1s. At least. And I still think I'm early. We'll probably jump around here for a bit. In the overnight, I mean, nah, not really. The one big one that's setting up at the moment is gold, as far as any swings going into the overnight, or at least potentials, because gold is sitting right on top of that major zone. If we go back to the original move down over here, and we look at where the market is bouncing off of, this was obviously longs building into this position, and they were obviously rewarded very well. It went up quite far. When it came back to their break-even point, they bought it again, tried rolling up, came back again, bought it again, rolled up, but it failed. Now that it's chopped back underneath it, they really need to step up to the plate and get this thing going now, because it's very unlikely that those buyers are going to want to stick around if it fails back down again. So this is kind of like a do or die point for gold. It's the 70.7 area if it can get a pullback, because realistically, it's not going to have to go far to invalidate it, but the reward potential is... I mean, man, at least back up towards the 1785s, and then up towards the 95s, and then back up towards the highs 1800s, etc. Nice continuation up. Hard to not want to take at least a little something off. But again, this is a potential V bottom showing some serious aggression. I don't want to hit the exits too quickly here. I am much more interested in holding all the way up towards at least the 50s. Maybe like 46, 47, whatever, it's settlement. Still can't ignore resistance. Let's see. Do we have any POCs? Yep. 13,923.50. They've been able to average themselves down to 23.50, and I want to see, are they treating this as a break even, or are they treating this as a launching point for a continuation? Because if they're treating it as a break even, then we're probably going to see further downward momentum, potentially enough to break the lows, in which case hitting the exits on a few more would make a bit more sense. I'll hedge my bets with one more. All right. Then we'll just let it go from there. All right. Well, that's going to do it. Overall, still kind of babysitting this one. We're sitting in a pretty good spot at the moment, but the seats were expensive on the way down, so it's got some work to do catching up. Upside objectives, you can see the first objective back into the 60s. I mean, at least back up to settlement, but realistically, if we can start chopping back above the 2950s and showing higher low support, etc., that's going to show a huge potential shift. And on the daily, we already know buyers are potentially buying below the previous low and filling in that gap. They want a nice bull bar closing back up again, which is kind of where that first objective is. If they can churn back up, maybe we see 24.75 all the way back up to the highs. You never know. It depends on how it forms. I don't think that's likely at the moment, though. I think it's more likely we see an inside high, possibly even a lower high. It really depends on what they do here at 23.50, so we'll just kind of have to keep our eyes on it. It's looking mediocre for right now, which is why I'm exiting a few more than I really want to, but I feel it's a necessity. Anyway, that's going to do it. I hope you had a great day of trading. If I miss any questions, feel free to shoot me an email, jhb@ssftg.com. I'll get you covered from there. Otherwise, enjoy the rest of the day, rest up, and we will see you all tomorrow, all right? Have a good one. We'll talk to you all later. Thanks.